You might think we live in an age of just spectacle, a time of grand displays, constant performance, and a whole lot of noise. But the source material we're digging into today, it argues we've crossed a completely different threshold. It says we're living in an era defined not by what we see, but by what we can finally comprehend. An age where information itself can bend reality way more powerfully than any ancient ritual ever could. So let's frame this with these two competing operating systems for reality. On one side, you've got the Pharaoh timeline. It runs on magic, fire, and big shows. And on the other, what the source calls the Marvel era. And let's be super clear, this has nothing to do with superheroes. It's about the marvel of a reality built on knowledge, light, and pure comprehension. One is loud and flashy, the other is exact. And it just is. All right, let's dive into that first timeline, because to really get the shift we're in, we have to understand the architecture of the system we're leaving behind. So in this context, magic isn't about fantasy. It's a system that absolutely depends on performance. It needs an audience, it needs crowds for validation, and it needs symbols to intimidate. And its fuel, illusion, cranked up by what the source calls fire. Think of it like this. Pharaoh lit these massive fires to seem godlike, right? But that same fire is what eventually consumed him. That kind of power, it can build pyramids, sure, but it can never, ever sustain balance. In the end, it just speeds up its own collapse. Okay, so now let's flip the coin and look at the opposite force, the one that really defines the era we're in now. And this is a power with a totally different signature. It's quiet, it's stable, and it's incredibly precise. And here's the crucial difference, the big takeaway. Where magic puts on a show for the crowd, knowledge, it withdraws. It actually simplifies all the complexity down to its most essential truth. And it grows silent, because its power isn't about convincing people. It's about its perfect, unshakable alignment with reality. It fundamentally refuses to be watered down by social noise, or popular opinion, or what we want it to be true. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It shows exactly why that withdrawal isn't some act of weakness. It's a discipline. It's strategic. I mean, think about it. If you're carrying a really precise signal, getting tangled up with crowds and worrying about status just introduces noise. So withdrawal becomes a kind of bandwidth protection. You're protecting the clarity of the truth, and that becomes the most important strategy of all. And this isn't some new idea. We see this pattern pop up all over history. Ibrahim stood alone, which is a powerful reminder that a majority vote doesn't make something true. The Sleekers of the Cave, they literally stepped aside to preserve their alignment, holding on to it until the world was finally ready. And even someone like Nikola Tesla went silent when he realized the system just wasn't ready for the knowledge he carried. In every single one of these cases, silence wasn't failure, it was containment. So if our reality is really governed by this quiet, precise knowledge, what's its underlying structure? Well, the source material describes this unbelievably detailed model. Think of it like a divine blueprint for the universe, a kind of universal source code. And at the very heart of it is this concept, the dual caustic universe. Now, caustic is a term from optics. It's about how light focuses. So try to picture reality emerging right where two different fields are focused together. You have a field of timeless truth, called light, and a field of mercy that operates in our time, called sound. And the buffer where they meet, where they interact and focus, well, that's our consciousness. Now, this whole interaction follows a very specific pattern called the 2-3-7 meson, which means balance. Let's walk through it real quick. It starts with a 2, duality. Everything is created in pairs, right? Light and dark, positive and negative. Then comes the 3, the test. This is where knowledge is processed and choices get made. And finally, you have the 7, completion. The resolution into one of 7 distinct states, what Scripture often calls heavens and hells. So creation, test, return. That's the core loop of the system. Now, get this. This entire blueprint, this whole universal source code, it's not just floating on ideas. It's held together and verified by a mathematical constant, a divine seal. The source text points to it directly in chapter 74, verse 30, which says, "Over it are 19." And this isn't just symbolic stuff. As you can see right here, this number is a precise mathematical lock. The 11 chapters, that's 19 times 6. The total verses, a multiple of 19. The opening prayer, the basmala, has exactly 19 letters. It literally functions as a mathematical proof of the system's integrity, a statistical improbability so huge that it points to a deliberate, intelligent design. Okay, so we've seen this grand cosmic blueprint, but how does this become something tangible, something personal? This is where the whole theory moves into practice. It's where the universal becomes individual. So the question for us really is, how do we get access to this? What's the key that actually shifts our own reality from that timeline of spectacle and illusion to the timeline of knowledge and real comprehension? The source material points to one specific command as the master key to all of this. It comes from chapter 19, verse 12. O Yahya, hold the book with strength. And this isn't presented as just some historical instruction. It's presented as a live protocol, something available to us right now. This is what the source calls the activation code, the 1912 protocol. It's a personal decision, a choice to engage directly with the source of this knowledge, the book, and to hold it firmly with real determination, making its principles the main operating system for your own consciousness. And this leads to a pretty radical conclusion. Access to this higher paradigm, it isn't based on your bloodline or what you inherit or your status. Lineage gets completely redefined. The true inheritors of this knowledge aren't born into it. They are the ones who decide to take action and grasp the book with strength. And this is the ultimate outcome. The age of knowledge doesn't defeat the age of magic by fighting it. It doesn't have to. It simply makes the illusions irrelevant. Just like a bright light doesn't argue with a shadow, it just dissolves it. Balance, by its very nature, collapses the imbalance that magic needs to even exist. And that brings us to the final thought here. If the key to shifting from a world of spectacle to a world of substance is really just a personal choice, a choice to engage with knowledge directly and firmly, then the source material leaves us with one last, really provocative question. When will you activate the 1912 protocol?